This is 5 on your side at 6. Focused on you.
The Missouri Department of Revenue suddenly makes it harder to change gender on state IDs. And tonight, the LGBTQ community wants answers. Thank you for being with us. I'm Ann Allred.
And I'm Mike Bush. The change happened weeks ago, but the department never publicly announced it. Our Justina Cornell is in the newsroom with more on this policy and its impact. Justina?
Today, I spoke to two organizations who focused their work on LGBTQ issues. After multiple people called about concerns on these changes, they're now wondering, how did this happen? But they're not the only ones asking.
It clearly targets trans and non-binary people.
Just been a huge shock for everybody.
A sudden shift sends shockwaves. Promo, an LGBTQ+ public policy and advocacy organization, launched a campaign for trans and non-binary folks to report issues in changing genders on IDs.
The state agency is supposed to serve the people, and in this instance, they really failed to do that.
This is after the Missouri Department of Revenue quietly removed a form on its website, a form that the group Metro Trans Umbrella Group shared often to its community.
So it used to be that you could just fill out this form with your information and talk with a medical provider or therapist that you have a long-standing relationship with through transgender care, and they could sign off that you have been living as the gender that you've been living as.
Now the Department of Revenue says instead Missourians must provide a court order or proof of gender-affirming surgery.
To complete a surgery that most trans and non-binary people never get because they don't feel they need to.
Kind of an over abuse of power, in my opinion.
Advocates believe this stemmed from protests of the Lifetime Fitness in Ellisville. This was over a trans woman with an ID describing her as female using the women's locker room. Missouri's Republican Attorney General launched an investigation, and Representative Justin Sparks reached out to the Department of Revenue. Days later, the form was removed without notice. However, Sparks now worries the move may be an overreach.
Issues like this should not be arbitrarily decided upon by an unelected bureaucrat in an administrative part of our government. Why was it quietly rolled out? This isn't something government should be fully transparent. This government is of the people, by the people, and for the people. So if something as significant as gender in a policy is going to be changed or written or pushed out, the people should know.
Now I asked the Department of Revenue what prompted this and if they can make these changes without notice. The department did not respond. Promo is hoping to meet the director to have further conversations.
Right now, St. Louis County Police are working to learn more about the suspicious death of a teenager. Officers responded to Getz Avenue in Limay this afternoon for calls of a shooting. That's when they found a teenage boy suffering from a gunshot wound. They have not released many other details, but ask anyone with information to please call police. You can also anonymously contact Crime Stoppers. That number, 1-866-371-TIPS.
Tomorrow will be the third day of school in the St. Louis Public School District, but the transportation problems linger. Some parents are still worried about how their kids will get to school in the morning. 5 on your side's Laura Barczewski joins us live outside district headquarters. And Laura, you're learning some things did improve for some of these families.
Yeah, and day 2 seems to have gone a lot better, but for some families, they remain stuck and nothing improved.
Yesterday, I had to drop them off, but a Prius brought them back.
Dejanelle Freeman has 3 kids in St. Louis Public Schools and is frustrated with the emergency transportation plan, but says day 2 was a step forward.
Things were very smooth this morning. He pulled up, the girls went out, and they made it to school safely this morning.
Freeman says she's grateful they had a ride, but pointed out it didn't match the information the district gave her and encourages other parents to verify how their kids are getting to school.
What I did yesterday was I got on the phone, I called the main line, and they let me know what vendor my children were utilizing. So I then called that vendor, and then I spoke directly to them.
While things worked out for Freeman's kids, co-chair of the Parent Action Council, Tracy Fantini, says it still didn't for others.
I know they're working very hard to get it straightened out, but the fact is we don't know how long it will take. And so having a backup plan, connecting with other parents and families is essential.
The district's acting superintendent said Monday they had about 72% of their students show up at school. And while transportation could have played a role in that for some, Fantini saw firsthand at the bus stop she volunteers at, there's more to it.
I saw kids at my stop who weren't ready to go to school, but they could have gone to school. The transportation, the vehicle showed up. but they weren't ready to go.
Parents who are having trouble with transportation can call 314-633-5107. And Fantini encouraged all parents, whether you drive or not, to join the Facebook group called SLPS Carpool Connection. And you can get more families to help you out when you have a transportation problem. Reporting live downtown, Laura Barcheski, 5 on your side.
Tomorrow, a St. Louis County judge could determine the fate of a death row inmate. Marcellus Williams is scheduled to be executed on September 24th for the murder of St. Louis Post-Dispatch reporter Felicia Gale. Earlier this year, County Prosecuting Attorney Wesley Bell filed a motion to overturn his conviction, citing there is no DNA evidence tying him to the crime. Just last week, Bell also called for an affidavit from Gale's husband to be tossed. He says the content in the affidavit is speculation and should not be admissible. Marcellus Williams isn't the only local man who's been behind bars for a crime he says he did not commit.
And tonight, our Annie Krall introduces you to a St. Louis man who was wrongly convicted, later exonerated, and is now working to support others who may be in the same position.
St. Louis native Obie Anthony founded the nonprofit Exonerated Nation. Anthony was released from prison in 2011 after being charged with murder in 1995. He's now dedicated his life to helping those who have been wrongfully convicted.
You never get over the trauma.
At a recent fundraiser in Lake St. Louis, his organization helped provide mental health, housing, and employment resources to people who have just gotten out of prison.
I tell people all of the time, I try to make joke about it that, prison made me to this big old softy. I'm like Winnie the Pooh now, They waste honey and I start crying because of the trauma that I went through. And this is one part of it I cannot shake.
Former federal prosecutor Lori Levinson is now on the Exonerated Nation board.
As lawyers, we can help get people out of prison, but it's putting together the rest of their life that really matters. Don't forget, people have had decades taken away from them. They don't have any social services, they don't have a job, they don't have mental health treatment.
People like Johnny Briscoe, who spent 23 years in a Missouri prison for a 1983 rape he didn't commit.
It's really hard because, here you are, being released from a prison system that you didn't spend half your life in, and to come out into the society that you once knew, it's hard to, find your place.
Annie Krall, 5 on your side.
Anthony says he's well aware of the Marcellus Williams case and will be following it closely over the next few weeks.
A building near Lafayette Square is being redeveloped nearly 2 years after a major fire caused multiple businesses to close. The Centennial Malt House on Choteau once housed Vin Dissette, PW Pizza, and 21st Street Brewers. The new owners are planning a $2 million renovation. One of the owners says he has a desire to restore this historic building.
We've just always loved the walkability and mixed-use aspects of St. Louis. We think there's small pockets of those areas, and we're really, really excited to kind of bring that to such a phenomenal area. Lafayette Square is definitely one of the premier neighborhoods in all of St. Louis.
The planned changes will include a new restaurant, event space, along with office space and 17 loft apartments. Building up downtown, the improvements planned near Busch Stadium and the Convention Center.
And what a gorgeous afternoon it's been across the bi-state region. The nice weather set to continue for much of the rest of the week, but there are changes heading into the weekend.